All right, so we're gonna talk about Michael Bay, who nobody in the world likes but me. I admit that. I have no problem with Bayhem. I have no problem with all of the tropes that engulf Michael Bay movies. I love them. Everyone is allowed to have, like, one of the things about these industries is, like, for something that's supposedly subjective, you're like not allowed to like certain things. Like, you're not allowed to like Michael Bay movies. You're not allowed to like Batman Forever. You're not allowed to like Batman and Robin. Of course, that one is objectively awful, but fine. There's people out there who probably enjoy watching it for whatever reason that is. But in these industries, like, you're not allowed to like certain things. And one of those things in past years has been critics hate Michael Bay and they want you to hate Michael Bay too. But I found this article about, because he's got a movie that came out this past weekend, which unfortunately did not do that well, but I knew that was going to happen because Sonic has been a juggernaut. But it says, Ambulances, Michael Bay. I have a feeling I feel the American dream has been twisted and is disappearing. So it says, basically he's talking about, was it paragraph 4 or question 4? He goes into this a lot and he talks about, he worked with, on Armageddon, and he worked with NASA, and he worked on The Rock, he worked with Navy SEALs, and he felt that, like, people talk about him being what is, like, considered to be hyper patriotic in a way, right? So it was question 4 down here. It says, this question, it says, when I think of Armageddon, I think of it as the perfect American action movie. Big, blustery, a pageant to American know-how. Anyway, it's very American. Would you call yourself a patriotic person? He says, it's interesting because a lot of European press have started to look at my movies and they say, you're a very patriotic director, and do you feel the American dream is disappearing? And I'm like, that's a very astute observation. And yes, I do. I feel the American dream has been twisted and is disappearing, and that's how I feel. I was curious because Mary asked beforehand, she goes, like, what would he know about the American dream?
Yeah, I don't know about his personal life or his career.
His dad was a CPA, like one of his parents was a CPA, and the other one was, I forget what the other one did, but he went to like a Santa Monica prep school, so he had an upper middle class living, but that does not mean that you don't understand the American dream. He started interning for George Lucas at 15. So it's all he ever wanted to do in his life was to make movies. He talked about a thing where it's like he like got like in trouble for like putting like bottle rockets on like a toy train when he was 8 and like wanting to make a movie of it, and stuff got like he put like basically like he wanted to make movies that involved big explosions from a very young age. So if that's not the American dream, what is? Like you find something you love when you're a kid. Every kid wants to be a firefighter or a cop, or well, not anymore. But like every kid back in the day wanted to be a firefighter or something when they grew up, and so you aspired to that, and that was kind of that's one version of the American dream. The other one is obviously it's like you grow up, you go to college, you get a good job, house, white picket fence, 2.5 kids. He is not married and does not have kids. But I think if you're talking about finding something you're passionate about and living in a country where that's possible to make a living out of, not just a living, but a very, very good living, I don't see that as not being the American dream. Does it feel weird that somebody of his means talks about that? I do not.
I don't think it's necessarily weird that he kind of understands in his own way, from his own point of view, what the American dream is. What's weird is that he's just like, yeah, that's over. And then the interviewer, in true EW fashion, is just like, all right, moving on. So let's talk about the military. And it's just like, okay, well, what does he mean by that? Like, why does he think? Is that because he's Gen X and he was one of the last few to kind of slip in under the
Gen X?
He's not? He's got to be Gen X. He's not Boomer.
If he's Gen X, he's at the very edge of Gen X.
He's got to be Gen X. He's not a Boomer.
What year does Gen X start?
I think you had to be born in the late 70s, early. No.
He's born in 65.
Yeah, that's
not
Gen X.
that's not Boomer.
The last Boomer is 63.
Okay.
So he's like right at the edge of Boomer.
But like I'm thinking about his career. Like, I mean, Bad Boys was his first movie or first hit?
First hit.
Okay. So I mean, like when you think about the filmmakers who were really exploding in the 90s, like that was a Gen X explosion. So I think that in many ways he typifies that, even if he's kind of on the cusp between the two generations. He's
very like to me. He's one of those people like whenever people I get crap for liking him. Like, well, he knows who he is.
Yeah.
He's unapologetic about who he is, which is a very American, or at least it used to be a very American trait, to be who you are and be and be unapologetic about who you are and creating what you want to create.
He's an auteur.
Yes.
He is his own auteur.
He's a very unique style of auteur. Like, they talk about, like, they hate the fact that he uses the Dutch angles and the 360 camera shot. I'm like, yeah, but he has a style.
Right.
And there's plenty of people who, like, you could watch their work and it's so cookie cutter and by the numbers that you don't understand that it could be anybody. So who really wins in the situation?
Well, that's why I think he's a craftsman, you know.
Yes.
But he also I wouldn't call him like a cinematic artist, even though he is an auteur. But I think he's more of an artist than Ron Howard.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I think that he's got more of a point of view and more of an interesting take on how to shoot a scene than somebody like Ron Howard has. And Ron Howard has had a great career.
If the purpose of it is, like, if you tried to convey something and what you got across, for better or worse, is what you wanted to convey, did you do your job accurately?
Right.
I would say he does on a regular basis.
I think
and there's also something you say, like, if you've ever been on a set where they have to do these incredibly complex scenes involving practical effects, whether it be explosions, blood squibs, very complex camera maneuvers, whether if it's gratuitous and over the top, but that's still art. Whether it's art that snobby, stuck-up critics like is irrelevant to this discussion. But back to what he was talking about, he says in the movie, your movies can be read as statements on America's military might. You have a thing, obviously, for vehicles and machines, but a lot of that hardware is military, and you work with the military on your shoots. Your films are comments on American strength. How intentional is that? See, this is like I came to a realization recently, almost on air when I was doing IRL. I was like, I love the propagandistic nature of, like, American military movies, but not because of its American military. I love the idea of people fighting for something bigger than them. I like the idea of people being part of a group that is extremely tight-knit, in which you will sacrifice yourself for the people around you. I believe in a world where you lose friends over something you argue about on Facebook. I love the idea that something bigger pulls you together and brings people to that point where they can sacrifice for one another. And I think he does that a lot with his American military, hero's journey stories. Whether you like the Transformers movies or not, it's still the story of a kid who's objectively, a dweeb becoming a hero during an alien robot apocalypse. Was the movie great? No, but I loved it for what it was, especially the first one. Anything after 3, no, but it got across the point that they wanted to. But he talks about it here. He says, the first time I worked with the military was The Rock, another classic, if you ask me. I was the first director to get real U.S. Navy SEALs in a movie. As Bruckheimer always told me, it's where you get great stuff, real people to do what they actually do. And he just goes through and he talks about that it comes from a matter of authenticity there. And it says, I'll tell you the reason why I do it, why he uses real people in the military. He says, when you start meeting these people that believe in their country, they put their life on the line, and you get to know them. It's a fascinating thing. And I have been so admiring of people that would do that. When I grew up, I kept asking my mom, will I have to go to Vietnam? It was very big and scary for me being a little kid and seeing the body count. I think there is, he goes, and they show war footage on the screen saying, he looked at that with fear and terror, and these are people that have volunteered to represent something, a greater cause, in their opinion. Whatever you believe about the U.S. military or the U.S., they've devoted their lives to that, and I think that there's something to say about that. They even talk in here about flags. Like, he puts flags in his movie, and Hollywood finds that offensive because Hollywood is anti-American nowadays. Says, when you start working around people at the Pentagon, people that go into hostile territories and rescue Americans, or when you go to NASA, you are awestruck. There's nothing like it in the world. It's a land of big toys. I think we were all crying on Armageddon when they literally shut down prepping the shuttle for 1 hour so we could go on the gantry. A loaded shuttle right there, and it's like, this is just awesome that we could do this, because that's the brain power and the total American can-do spirit. I love that. I love the fact that there's still directors that believe in that, because I don't get that sentiment from Hollywood these days. I don't. I get more globalist in a sentiment. I feel like nationalistic movies are looked down upon I don't know if that's something that you feel that you've seen within these industries.
Well, thinking about this with Michael Bay and and having just read a book that kind of talks about Hollywood and China's relationship, I was looking up. There's this op-ed from Variety in 2014, Transformers, a splendidly patriotic film if you happen to be Chinese.
I saw that.
So,
that was for Dark of the Moon. That was like
Right.
right when Chinese influence started to permeate Hollywood.
but so, I mean, he's not patriotic. He's a corporatist. I mean, in the sense that, yeah, he's patriotic to the extent that this is a product that can
Yes.
have a global value so long as a large portion of the movie-going market authorizes it,
Yeah.
even if that's under an authoritarian regime. So patriotic, yeah, well, I thought it was funny that he forgot that there was one flag in his movie. He was just like, oh, there's one flag. It's like, oh yeah, there was another flag. So,
Well, I
mean,
think he's trying to play it off, like he
Sure.
like he doesn't think about it that much. Oh yeah, this is one. Like I think it was more like I think if he had a count of how many flags were in there, that would be weird. So,
Have you seen it yet?
I have
Ambulance?
not seen it.
Okay.
Yet. We saw Sonic this weekend.
Oh, gotcha,
So
gotcha.
it says, but he says he thinks that we've lost the can-do spirit here in America. I don't know how if I agree about that. I think that if you are on social media a lot, that might actually be something you think is true. Out in the real world, I'm not sure, but this is something that's kind of been part of him for a while, because I always compared him to, he always has the military, he always has American flags. There's always that underlying theme. And I found this old article from Mother Jones in 2014 that says Michael Bay, Hollywood's conservative hero. I don't think he is at all, but it just, I want to show you this paragraph because it's hilarious how different things are now. When you think about, it says, when I talked to the 49-year-old director last year, he demurred on the question of whether he leans right or left. And like I said, I don't want this podcast to be about politics. I want it to be about whether the American dream, whether he is authorized, whether he is like an authority, and whether the American dream might have died or not. I don't know. I think it's very easy to be black-pilled and think that that's actually true. But I think that that's a product of the age we live in, and the way America's viewed as a country is very different now than it was 20, 30 years ago. But he says, he says, yes, I am a political person and I have my views about America. Bay told me, I'm very proud of my country. Obviously, it's going through a lot of turmoil and we have a very ineffectual government. It doesn't matter at all whether I'm liberal or conservative. It's not a part of what I do. I don't feel the need to go out and tell people what I believe politically. That's beautiful. That's how all people in Hollywood should respond.
But that was kind of acceptable back in 2014.
Yes,
though.
but as I'm saying,
He
like,
wouldn't have been left alone for saying that now.
they barely left him alone in this article.
He's saying that because he's a corporatist.
Yes.
I mean, that's.
But I
find that objectionable.
I would take the same opinion. I would take the same opinion.
But you're not a corporatist.
No.
He's speaking from that angle, I think. I mean,
I think that's interpretive.
It's certainly interpretive, but that's what I take from that. Because look at his output and look at the kind of movies that he does. I mean, they're not for me, but I can acknowledge that there's some level of artistry and craftsmanship there. But I mean, he is making a corporate product.
Everyone at that level is
more so than the artists that I admire personally. So yeah, I see him coming from the perspective of being a corporatist. That's why he's going to play coy and say, well, it's not really about right or left. Of course, it's not for you because it's all about the product.
It's for me, if somebody was to ask me the same questions, I would just say, like, if somebody like asked me that question, even just hosting this podcast, like, it's irrelevant. Like, what I believe, like, I want to talk about this stuff and talk about ideas, but first of all, I hate the idea of labeling that stuff anyway, so it's stupid. It says, Bay is obviously more private about his politics than, say, mega producer Jerry Bruckheimer, who worked with Bay on his biggest hits of all time. I think he worked with him on The Rock, right? Or Armageddon.
The Rock, Armageddon, yeah.
So it's just, I think it's interesting to hear how the opinions on, like, because we talk a lot about whether Hollywood is disconnected from the average person. That I do agree with. That the average Hollywood producer, director, actor has no idea what the grievances of the average American citizen. So it's interesting to me to hear their perspective on one that's not very, like, I feel like his is different from the hive of which he belongs to, meaning the corporate Hollywood machine, but it's still acceptable within their realm. He's still allowed to make the stuff he wants to make, but I do think it's interesting to have this discussion with people who we wouldn't have anything in common with, right? So how he sees America and we see America are very different. Do you see the American dream as something that's died long ago?
I don't think I'm qualified to speak on it, but the impression I'm getting...
Are you an American? You're an American, thus you have the right to speak on it.
Yeah.
Sure, but the impression I'm getting of why he's come to that conclusion is that he's been creating in this niche for so long that niche. I don't know.
I say niche.
that
Other people say niches.
he's realizing he's giving it to an audience becoming more and more cynical and disillusioned with the American dream,
Yeah.
and that's how he's coming to the conclusion that it's died.
Yep. I think there will be a renaissance for this type of film, just like in the '80s with hyper patriotic movies. I think that, post Cold War, I think eventually you come out of it and everything is cyclical anyway, and the pendulum always swings back the other way. Or at least let me rephrase that. My hope is that it comes back around the other way, and there's a niche for that going the way. Ambulance is like the best reviewed movie he's had in ages.
Interesting.
Like a lot, like IndieWire gave it a good review, and getting a good review on a Michael Bay movie from IndieWire is like seeing a unicorn. Like that's very, very hard to believe. So we will see how that happens. I do want to see. I would like to see more people have more esoteric discussions about these things. Like I'd rather hear somebody talking about their beliefs about something like the American dream than actual policy and politicians, because most of them are vague, are so unaware of what's actually going on anyways, that they're speaking on things that they're not necessarily the most informed about. So it'd be a lot cooler to have them have more abstract discussions, even if I disagree with them in a realm like this.
That's a good point. But I'm more I think about this, I think I'm having a disconnect with Michael Bay and the American Dream. For some reason, it's just not that connection's just not firing off for me. And I think it's because when I think about the American Dream in terms of being somebody that, kind of just really drives after what you want to do, a very pure artistic vision, and nothing's going to stop you. And I'm also thinking that like movies are over, like they lasted from 1919 to 2019, and that's it. Like they had a good 100-year run, so I think they're pretty much over. But when I see stuff from Sean Baker, who did The Florida Project and Tangerine and Red Rocket, like that's somebody that I think is really making the American Dream thrive at an artistic level. Like he takes his $1 million or less, he makes a movie that he exactly wants to make, and he doesn't compromise at all. And he's doing that at a time when I would argue that movies are dead, like totally dead. So that is a good example of the American Dream. Michael Bay, I don't know. I think there's a disconnect there that's not really working for me.
Perhaps when he was younger, perhaps starting out like the idea of starting out at 15, interning for a director that you really respect and working your way up through that machine. If being successful in an industry you want to work in, whatever that your definition of success, if that is the part of the American Dream, then I would argue that he has accomplished that.
Well, yeah, I mean, if it wasn't for Michael Bay, we would not have that iconic image of Will Smith running through the streets with his shirt off and Bad Boys. And that's something Will writes about in his last memoir, about how like they argued about that. Michael Bay was just like, no, run with your shirt off. And he was just like, I'm not going to do it. That's stupid. And they argued back and forth, and he didn't want to. Michael Bay was just like, you just have to listen to me. This is going to be the most iconic image. You have to just do this. And he did it. And then, here both of them are.
There we go. Very different places in life right now.
But both very successful thanks to the American Dream.
Exactly. Well, there you go. Like if financial success is how you gauge it, then they're both definitely
in Hollywood.
Why
certainly
do you think that movies are dead?
They just are. At 2019 there was like some sort of apex, and now it's gone. I mean, you've got TikTok. You've got the narrative form of TV has advanced beyond what movies are able to do. They're dead. There's no.
Do you just think the video
movies.
Content is so oversaturated that there's too much to consume? And that makes the quality go down? That
definitely plays a role. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different factors that play a role in that. I think the attention span thing has something to do. I think it's the immediacy. I think that
the funniest part about that is like you said, TV has proven itself to be a superior form of storytelling now. But somebody doesn't have like I said, I complained endlessly about the Batman being 3 hours long, but I can watch Tokyo Vice, which is going to be like 10 episodes at 60 minutes.
But at your own pace.
Yeah,
it's easier to consume. That doesn't mean it's better.
No. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's funny that it's like, do I want to watch a 3-hour movie? No, but do I want to binge 5 episodes of a show that are an hour long? Sure, I'll do that, even though arguably I'm spending more time doing it.
It's just visual popcorn.
Yes.
Like it's gone before you know it.
Exactly. So we'll see. I would like to see a resurgence of that type of movie. I want the end of Cold War era movies again in the next 5 years, if possible. Maybe the pendulum swings back the other way.
I'll see you in 5 years to talk about it.
Well, to tell me I was wrong, to be like, told you so, told you that was never going to happen. It's probably what will end up happening. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.